Hi there everyone, you are watching the Vintage Sewing Machine Garage and its mechanic following along in the process I use to restore and revive to rescue vintage sewing machines that have been asleep or hibernation for a long time. This is such a model, but just because a machine is old doesn't mean it's worn out. In fact, given the condition of the paint of this machine, while it's not always a perfectly accurate gauge, I'm thinking this machine didn't get a whole lot of use. Uh, but maybe it will in the future. So this, of course, is something I recognize. This is the wonderful, the one of the last versions, I believe, of Singer's beltless direct drive motors. And this is the bracket I'm used to seeing in a 301, 400, 500 series. This being the 600 series, there may be some differences, and I'm of the belief that these motors are not. Oh, that has not been taken off since 1962. That they may not be compatible. In other words, you may not be able to use this motor in a 301, for example. They look similar, but they may not be exact. If any of you know for sure, let me know. Of course, we still have this nice, big, strong bolt. Looks very similar to the bolts that I've seen in the past. There's that nice steel bracket that holds everything in place. Okay, well this looks different, and I guess it should because remember the plug style changed, and so the wires coming from the motor are now going into this this plug, which apparently just sort of sits here, I guess. It's held in place obviously by the bracket that I just removed. Now, when you come into, if you're going to remove the motor, as I am, you do not need to remove all of these wires, even though they're color coded, because you still have two wires that connect to the motor, and they connect essentially the same way as they always did in the other Slant-O-Matic machines. See, we zoom in. I don't know if it will be. Hopefully it'll make more sense. Okay, let's look at it from this side. You guys can see right here. Here are the two wires that I always remove. And now these are both colored red. So this is the one on the right. Come here. That's just a little bit of old grease on it. That one on the right, if you're worried you won't remember which was which, you can just actually take a little Sharpie and put R on it or something if you wish. And then we will see about retrieving this motor from its little happy place there. Okay, this is not one of those fat-nibbed. This is some sort of pen of some sort. We'll just put R. If it's a permanent marker, it should eventually dry, not get rubbed off, because if you rub it off with your fingers, then you're back to where you were before. Okay, now we'll take the other. I'm not going to mark it because I know which one is the right one. And they came off just fine. Now, if you want, again, we want to kind of get this, we want to have this out of our way. We don't want to really disturb it. Now, let's just see, will the motor come out as it should? Sometimes they get stuck. Remember, it's been sitting in the same spot for a long time. I actually had to shake one out once, carefully. Now I can also go up to the other end here, where the worm gear of the motor is. And sometimes pushing on that, there it goes. I just pushed on it and it wants to come right out. Now, let's see. Do you guys see this? This is old oil And I suspect that one of the reasons we're seeing it is because sometimes either people oil things they shouldn't, or in any event, it's on the outside. So I'm not really worried about that. So I'll get a good soft rag and get it cleaned up. Okay, so I just got an old part of an old shirt here, and first thing I want to do is just wipe any oil that will come off on its own. And if I took any of the grease off that I put on here that got from the Textilite gear that it was sharing, I can always add more there. I have to service this motor, and for me, what that basically means is I'm going to, well, I've got a little bit of old oil here. And remember, the thing that you do not want is to get oil on the inside of your motor. So I'm going to be taking a look at this motor to see. I can inspect its brushes. Now, based on what I think I'm seeing, I don't think we're going to have any real serious brush wear. I mean, never say never, but it's going to be I'm going to be really surprised if we do, because, again, I don't see a lot of wear. Now, is it possible that someone was just super careful and sewed a lot and never got any scratches on the paint? It's certainly possible, but I don't know. All right, there's some kind of, looks like an old, I don't know what that is. Old chunk of grease. I don't know how that got on there. And just looking at the contacts, they're nice and shiny. The brass is still looking gorgeous. And of course, they changed this a little bit. The screws are different color, but you still have a screw that allows you to remove what the brush cap looks like on these motors. And it hadn't really changed all that much. It looks a little different slightly. But I wouldn't, this says PA10-8. That is the series of this motor. Keep in mind that even though the basics of this motor never really change, some of the specifications would potentially change over the life of, if Singer had Slant-O-Matics in production, I have to go back and see when the last Slant-O-Matic was made. Do any of you know? I mean, 1950 to, was it into the 60s? A long time. But be careful if you say, oh, I need a motor. Very rarely, these motors are so incredible that anything can happen. And if you have to get one, make sure you know that you get the motor that will be compatible, whether it's a 300 series, 301 or 401, 500, or whichever the series it is. Now, where is my isopropyl alcohol? So on this lovely, incredible aluminum, I believe that's aluminum. The housing of this, other than the plastic, is aluminum. And I'm just going to take, this is 99% isopropyl alcohol. And the reason I'm removing this, it's not aesthetics. It's not like you ever stare at it. But this old oil can get gummy, and it can cause your sewing machine, or it can cause this motor to get stuck. So because it's not designed to have oil on it, but it happens, right? So what are my plans? I am going to inspect the brushes on this motor, and we'll take a look at the commutator. We'll do that in the next video. And then after that, once I confirm the brushes are okay, I'm hopefully cautiously optimistic that they will be. And what else is left to do? We'll clean, like I say, we'll clean the commutator, and then what else is left? You guys remember, if you see my Slant-O-Matic direct drive motor videos before, I have quite a few. I'll be, of course, adding 2 drops of SAE 30 weight oil, not sewing machine oil, 30 weight oil, and that is to help preserve the old grease in the bearings. I have no reason to think the bearings are bad, but the grease is old. It needs a little bit of a, like a multivitamin, you might think. And then here on the worm gear, I'll go ahead and add more of the grease that we need. And that should take care of this portion of the machine. I am curious to see it because like I say, I've not seen the motor in a touch and sew because I've never seen a touch and sew, never had one to work on and explore. So as far as I can tell, everyone, the quality of this motor did not change. Singer was under a lot of pressure in the early 60s. Get your costs down. Costs are rising. Competition is not, they're not waiting for us. They're moving on. So we gotta do what we can do. And of course, Singer could, for many years would rely on its name. It had such an incredible name in the sewing machine world. But that doesn't mean that they could simply rely on that, right? So they were going to, you either cut costs and sell on price, which might work for a while, and then you've got to innovate. And the competition was innovating. And I believe, and we'll explore this more in a different video, I believe Singer created one of the most amazing innovations, not perfect, but one of the most amazing innovations ever. And I believe with the Touch and Sew series, it would be one of their last great innovations in sewing machines, which had been around since, the 1800s at least. So thank you all for watching me explore this new to me Singer Touch and Sew. And I'm going to be going through, and some of these procedures you'll recognize because you've seen me do these types of things before. And we'll be, be going through, making sure the machine has been checked. Is there any problems? I've got to go into the bobbin area to check that out. And of course, the bobbin system in the Touch and Sew, for those of you who don't know, well, that's an early hint to what made this such an incredible piece of engineering. It also created some problems. But whenever you do something new, there's always the chance that you're going to have issues. And I believe the Singer Company would solve those. But the most important thing about this machine is that I still see steel. I still see metal. Very expensive to produce. And so again, we see, as you see over the series of videos I'm making on this machine, it's clear that they're under pressure to cut corners, and sometimes cutting costs doesn't really affect the performance of the machine, and it may not even affect the long-term viability and restoration potential of the machine. But at some point, you can only cut so much until planned obsolescence takes hold. So I believe, you guys tell me if I'm being overly optimistic, I believe this machine is heirloom quality. I believe it can last and last. And when it comes to Singer's heirloom machines, it is one of the last that they would ever produce. Thank you all for watching. We'll see you next time.